Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi-Night Light, where I talk about random topics that somehow relate to sci-fi and horror. So, in early January, we're finally getting the release of Season 11 of the X-Files. So, in celebration of my favorite show ever, we're going to be sporadically releasing several X-Files related videos spread out amongst other videos as well. Originally, the idea was to do an X-Files month, but instead it'll be chunks of X-Files sprinkled amongst the channel. So, the X-Files can basically be divided up into two different kinds of episodes, the mythology and the standalones, also called the Monster of the Week episodes. These weren't related to the overall show's story and could be viewed separately from the whole alien conspiracy thing. And they were pretty fucking awesome. A lot of people seem to only like the alien conspiracy episodes, but for some reason I always preferred the Monster of the Week episodes. And when it came to monsters, damn they delivered. From classic monsters like werewolves, vampires, and zombies, to more unusual monsters like the invisible forest men, human bat hybrids, and of course, everyone's favorite monster of the week, the Fluke Man. Creating interesting, colorful, and unique monsters is one of the strengths that the X-Files always had, but what exactly was it that made the monsters in the show so great? Why were they so memorable and unique? Well, to start, there was just so much creativity involved. While some were definitely more on the all-round monster side, most of them were very human in form at least. Like the very first monster of the week ever, Eugene Victor Toombs, an over 100-year-old genetic mutant who can pretty much live forever by going into hibernation every 30 years after killing people and eating their livers. Okay, so that's kinda creepy enough, but on top of that, he's also able to stretch and contort his body in order to squeeze into tight spaces, and challenges himself to get to hard-to-reach victims, almost like he was hunting for sport. And this villain was so great that they brought him back for a second episode. Toombs also illustrates one of the strengths that these monsters have: vulnerability. Vampires need blood to survive, Toombs needs livers. Okay, so that's not quite as cool, but the point is that adding vulnerability also gives one kind of an understanding for these monsters, as a lot of it is out of necessity, kind of like a predatory animal in a way. This vulnerability is reflected in most of the so-called monsters, like Virgil in Canto in the episode Too Shy. He's another kind of mutant, unable to produce fatty acids himself, so he preys on overweight women and eats their fat in order not to die from drying up. So he's almost like a fat vampire, and it's actually more gross than it sounds, which is awesome. This idea is so unique and weird that it actually really works.
Why?
When you look at me, you see a monster. But I was just feeding hunger.
And let's jump to the beginning of Season 2 and one of the most memorable monsters ever, the previously mentioned Fluke Man. First of all, this design is fucking legendary. There's so much hard work and practical effects put into this suit. It's gross, it's the stuff of nightmares, but it's also something truly tragic, as this monster used to be a man who was mutated by radiation. Now he lives and reproduces by laying eggs inside the poor bastards unfortunate enough to cross his slimy path. And for as gross and creepy as it is, it's just kinda trying to get by and survive, once again being a monster that is truly vulnerable and only guilty of its own natural impulses for self-defense and reproduction. In regards to finding sympathetic monsters, the standout comes from the Season 7 episode Hungry, in which fast food employee Rob Roberts is the main character, as this episode is actually from the monster's perspective. We get to see how Roberts struggles with his hunger for human brains, and he desperately tries to avoid hurting people, but his hunger simply overtakes him. And when at his real form, we get a pretty sad ending in which Roberts accepts not only to be a monster, but to die as one, since that's what he is.
Why?
I can't be something I'm not.
This episode was written by Vince Gilligan, who made Breaking Bad. and was once more very good at getting us to sympathize with a villain.
Do you think that looks like a bad person? An unworthy person? I'll tell you what I see. I see a nice smile. I see soulful brown eyes. I see good.
Season 4 gave us a fantastic episode called Leonard Betts, which gives us a gross, powerful monster that we truly sympathize with. Leonard Betts is another kind of genetic evolution who can regenerate his limbs, even his head, by eating people's cancer. He takes advantage of this by working at a hospital, but circumstances lead him to go on the run. Now, eating people's cancer doesn't sound bad, but he ends up having to kill to get it. Here, I genuinely felt sorry for the guy, and not just because of the whole regeneration part seemed extremely painful. He comes off as someone who doesn't like what he does. When he's found out by a friend and colleague, he's more or less forced to kill her to conceal his secret, but you can tell he's not happy about it.
I'm sorry.
In the final confrontation with Agent Scully, when we find out that her alien abduction gave her cancer, Betts makes a heartfelt apology before trying to kill her.
I'm sorry. But you've got something I need.
In the episode Unruhi, also Season 4, seriously, goddamn, Season 4 is fucking excellent. Anyway, in it Mulder and Scully chase a psychotic man who kidnaps and lobotomizes women, and his thoughts and visions are transferred onto photographs. These deeds are motivated by deep psychological trauma, as the villain's sister committed suicide and they were both subject to abuse from her father. The villain even actually thinks he's helping these women by ridding them of demons in their brain, an obvious projection of his own mental illness.
They live inside your head. They make you do things and say things that you don't mean. And all your good thoughts can't wish them away. You need help. You've got them right there.
Now, this isn't something unique to just the X-Files. Now, we're used to more complex characters and villains that we understand and sympathize with. But these villains are very rarely monsters in the same regard. And let's face it, I think most of us have more sympathy for some of these freaks of nature than half of the villains in Game of Thrones. The X-Files did it earlier when things were more black and white, and it's this way of writing that elevates villains in general. In a weird twist, one could almost rewrite an episode to make it so that Mulder and Scully are the villains, and that kind of makes these monsters even better. Now, that's not to say that the X-Files didn't deliver some truly despicable and horrible villains that stand out for completely different reasons. Mrs. Paddock, who may or may not be Satan herself, was a demon in sheep's clothing, and beneath her fragile, peaceful exterior, there was something truly horrifying and irredeemable. Similar sophisticated facades are seen by the Witch Doctor in Sanguinarium, the cannibals in the episode Our Town, and more. Serial killer and death fetishist Donnie Pfaster collected hair and fingernails from his victims and cleaned them up like dolls before killing them, and seemed to be able to shapeshift to personify evil in several different forms. Played expertly by Nick Chinlund, he gives off this hollow, almost fake human kind of feel.
Lisa, this is,
Donnie Pfaster.
he's taking over for Skip.
Oh, hi. I'm gonna go over to Steve's now, okay?
Okay.
No serial killer can be topped though by John Lee Roach in the episode Paper Hearts, again from Season 4. This has Tom Noonan playing a fucked up child molester and murderer. Just as with Donnie Pfaster, it's his calm, innocent demeanor that makes him so frightening. An almost childlike innocence seems to be running over these evil monsters.
Mint grew outside her window. I stood outside her window atop sprigs of mint. It smelled wonderful.
Tom Noonan's portrayal is perfect. He's calculated, smart, sinister, and you can tell there's something behind his eyes, that he's hiding something. The way the X-Files can make the more monstrous villains human and the more human villains monstrous is excellent. In many ways, the X-Files monsters work so well for the same reason that the show works so well. A lot of the show was about how shadows are getting smaller, the inside coming to light, dark secrets being exposed, and things not really being what they seem. In this way, by peeling back the shadows of the monsters, we find desperation, necessity, and humanity. And while peeling back the shadows of the human villains, we get cruelty, sadism, and horror. While searching for evil in the form of monsters, we realize that we might actually find true evil in the heart of man.
And understanding what scares us most is that which is most familiar, most commonplace. That boy next door, Donnie Faster, the unremarkable younger brother of 4 older sisters, extraordinary only in his ordinariness, could grow up to be the devil in a button-down shirt.
In my opinion, this is what really cemented the Monster of the Week episodes as essential viewing for the X-Files experience. It's not always about worldwide alien conspiracies. Sometimes the smaller stories can be just as important from a character and story perspective, and it's a major aspect to make this show so damn great. So that about does it for this episode of Sci-Fi-Night Light. We hope you enjoyed it. And what's your favorite X-Files monster? Let us know in the comments below. I'm your host, Sebastian Vendel Martinez, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Who takes advantage of someone like that? A human. That's who.